Imagine that you live in a very ancient time when God still spoke directly to his people. You are part of the kingdom of Judah, one of the two kingdoms that formed after God's people split. The other kingdom, called Israel, turned away from God and worshipped false gods. Because of this, God allowed a terrible enemy to attack them and lead them into exile: the Assyrians. The Assyrians were a cruel and powerful people who conquered every nation in their path. They had a vast army with war chariots, horses, and archers. They were also notorious for brutally torturing and killing their prisoners. No one could withstand their attack. But you are fortunate. You live in the kingdom of Judah, where King Hezekiah rules with justice and faithfulness to God. He did many good things for his people, like removing idols from the land, repairing the temple of God, and celebrating the Passover feast. He also trusted in God to deliver him from his enemies, such as the Philistines and Egyptians. He knew that God was the only one who could protect him from the Assyrians. And he was right. One day, the Assyrians surrounded your city, Jerusalem, and threatened to destroy it if you didn't surrender. They mocked God and your king, saying that no God could save you. They sent letters and messengers to intimidate you and make you lose hope. But Hezekiah remained steadfast. He took the letters and messengers to the temple of God and prayed fervently, seeking divine help. And God heard his prayer. He sent the prophet Isaiah to deliver a message. "Do not be afraid of the king of Assyria, for I will defend you. I will make him return to his own land, and there he will fall by the sword." And that's exactly what happened. That very night, an angel of the Lord entered the Assyrian camp and killed 185,000 soldiers all at once. When the king of Assyria woke up in the morning, he saw all his men dead on the ground. He was terrified and fled back to his country. There, he was assassinated by his own sons. This was one of the most incredible divine interventions recorded in the Bible. It demonstrates the power and faithfulness of God to those who trust in him and obey his commandments. It also shows that no enemy is too great for God, and he can do extraordinary things to save his people. After witnessing God's miracle, Hezekiah was deeply grateful and composed a beautiful psalm of praise. He acknowledged that God had delivered him from death and his enemies, and that God was his refuge, creator, and redeemer. He also asked God to extend his life in peace. However, Hezekiah was not perfect. He also made some serious mistakes that had consequences for his people. One of these errors was boasting about his wealth before Babylonian envoys, a kingdom that was growing in power and ambition. Hezekiah showed them everything he had in his palace, treasury, and temple. He didn't realize he was arousing the Babylonians' greed and envy, and they later invaded Judah and took everything he had. Another mistake of Hezekiah was not raising his son Manasseh well, who became king after him. Manasseh was one of the worst kings of Judah, doing all kinds of evil in the eyes of God. He restored the idols Hezekiah had removed, built altars for false gods, practiced witchcraft and human sacrifices, and killed many innocent people. He led the people of Judah away from God and provoked his anger. This story teaches us many important lessons about how we should relate to God. It teaches us to trust in God during difficult times, to pray with faith and humility, to praise God for his works, and to obey his commandments. It teaches us that God is our refuge, creator, and redeemer, and that we should remain faithful to him in all circumstances. Hezekiah, despite his remarkable achievements, also warns us about the dangers of pride and complacency. He allowed himself to be seduced by temporal blessings and didn't consider the long-term consequences. Furthermore, the story highlights the importance of recognizing that God is the author of our victories, and glory should be attributed to him. The defeat of the Assyrians wasn't due to Hezekiah's merit or any human strategy, but rather divine intervention. When faced with challenges and adversities, like Hezekiah, we should turn to prayer and seek God's guidance. He is capable of altering the course of history and intervening in our situation according to his will. However, we must also remember that his response may not always align with our expectations, but we can trust that he always works for our good. Just like Hezekiah, we are imperfect beings who make mistakes, but we can learn from our errors and strive for lives of humility, obedience, and trust in God. We should consider both temporal and eternal blessings, remembering that God is above all and his plan is always greater than our limited understandings.